There's an amazing book by Dr. Marti Olsen Laney called The Hidden Gifts of the Introverted Child, Helping Your Child Thrive in an Extroverted World, right? It's this long title of the book. In the book, Laney says that kids are born, and we know this, but Laney talks about it with this history, with certain innate temperaments, and parents are key in how that temperament is nurtured. But she's clear that introverts are mostly born that way. Okay. I know. So that's the first thing. Introverts are mostly born that way. In fact, of all the personality traits, remember that I have the 5, the introversion extroversion continuum is strongly hereditary. It's probably one of the strongest of them, the most strongly hereditary of all 5, or close to it. So believe it or not, how introverted or extroverted you are is based mostly in your biochemistry. So just like your DNA comes together to give you maybe blue eyes, brown hair, and long legs, right? Wish I had all those. Your brain chemistry, it's the same. What's going on in your, physical or internally is the same. So how your particular neurochemistry works depends on your particular, makeup, what's going on inside you. And just as, heart disease might run in your family, so can and do depression, alcoholism, anxiety, all these things, all because of how your brain's chemical messengers, your neurotransmitters, those are your brain's chemical messengers, all because of how they line up or don't line up. And one of these neurotransmitters, dopamine, which I've talked about many times before on the podcast, is key here when we talk about introversion, extroversion. When you're going after some kind of external reward, dopamine is released for the vast majority of people. And it's this reward effect that has you going back for another donut, another cookie, another drink, another pair of pants if you're shopping, to another date with that person who's no good for you. There's a way that dopamine helps us really focus our attention on something, especially when it's linked to a reward effect. So, and here's what's crazy. So research has shown that the brains of introverts are far less sensitive to dopamine. I want you to think about that for a minute. The brains of introverts are far less sensitive to dopamine because introverts they don't get the same excitement or reward that extroverts do. Yeah, so they don't get as much external stimulation, right? They don't go after as much external stimulation, right? So other people, parties, events, they don't go after that external stimulation in the same way that extroverts do because they're not getting the same reward. So it's nature, your biochemistry, and of course, what events and circumstances happen to you, the nurture part, so the nature part and the nurture part, that decide where you're going to be on that introversion, extroversion continuum. But again, the research shows that most people tend to stay true to the preference they showed in the first, in the first 4 months of your life. No. And I'm picturing pictures of myself as an infant, as a baby, little baby in a crib, when I could kind of stand and pull myself up in a crib. And every single picture, I'm smiling. I mean, there's not a picture of me, like you'd be hard pressed to find a baby picture of me where I'm not smiling, excited when someone walked in the room. My family talks about it. I'm the youngest of all my siblings. My siblings have talked about it, that I was always quote unquote happy. Now that has its own issues, because then I was a heroin addict. How happy were you, Abby? But there's certainly something that was very much temperament there about that. And then there was something, of course, around the nurture. Think of that. So then think of the feedback reward system that's always happening. If you're, a happy baby who's always smiling, guess what? People want to pick you up. They want to spend time with you. They like you. They bring you around. They take you out, because you're fun to be around, that kind of thing. So obviously that kind of circumstance, that kind of nurture is then playing a part with the nature. Yeah. Interesting, right? So, and you have your own story to tell about this. And my guess is that the people listening most are probably introverts. If you comment under the video on YouTube, I would love to hear if you're an introvert or an extrovert, because my guess when I was writing this was introverts would likely listen to this more because they are usually the ones that are told to be different more than extroverts are.